I'm catching up on every last mainline Resident Evil game that I have missed. I've already played the beloved original trilogy and the controversial Code Veronica. The links to both videos are in the description. Going by the release order, the next one was one of the black sheep of the franchise, Resident Evil 0. While Code Veronica has its share of hardcore fans, the consensus towards 0 seems to be nothing more than a shrug. Usually these are the types of games that are the least interesting to play and to discuss, in my experience. Still, I was intrigued enough to give it a chance, especially considering that rumors are swirling that this game will also be remade. I played it, and in a few words, it has strengths I can't dismiss, and it was also too painful of an experience for me to walk away with just a shrug. In this video I will walk you through what it was like for me to play this game for the first time, and whether or not a remake would even be worth it. And if it is, what should and shouldn't be changed. But before we get into that, hi, I'm Jerry and welcome to my channel Scharfsinn, a place for game reviews, essays and the occasional analysis focused on games from a variety of different genres, new and old. I also like to write reviews over on Backlogged to share my immediate experiences with the games I play. If you're interested in any of that, I'd be glad to see you stick around. But now, let's get started. Resident Evil 0 was released for the Nintendo GameCube in 2002 and could be called the fifth mainline entry into the series, if you count Code Veronica, which I think you should. 0 was the last game that used the fixed camera perspective that Resident Evil was known for, before Resident Evil 4 fundamentally changed what the series could be, 3 years later. 0 also came out in the slipstream of the Resident Evil 1 remake, which came out only 8 months earlier. It used the exact same engine and style of pre-rendered backgrounds, and it still looks just as impressive to this day. 0 eventually received the same treatment as the RE1 remake with a remastered version in 2016. This remaster offers widescreen support, a modernized control scheme, and the option to play as Albert Wesker on repeat playthroughs. This is the version I played, and right away I was stunned by how good it looked, even though I knew what to expect from RE1. I'll go over the merits of a potential remake of 0 later, but it needs to be said here that on a visual level there isn't even much room for an uplift. It looks that good. I picked the modern control scheme, even though it only ended up messing with my muscle memory, and dove in. Resident Evil 0, as the title implies, is a prequel to the first game, and by extension also a prequel to Resident Evil 2 and 3. You start off playing as Rebecca Chambers, who also appeared in the first game. She and a few other members of the STARS division of the Raccoon City Police are investigating strange murders in the suburbs of Raccoon City, which is when they come across a car wreck and signs of a missing felon named Billy Cohen. In the middle of the forest and separated from her colleagues, Rebecca finds a train that's standing still and decides to investigate further. On the train she finds Billy, and the two of them strike up an uneasy alliance as zombies and other mysterious creatures start attacking them on the now moving train. One of Resident Evil 0's key features is that you control Rebecca and Billy at the same time. The way it works is that you are always in full control of one of them while the other one is controlled by an AI. You can switch between them at any time while adjusting whether or not your AI companion is aggressive or idle. You can also choose to leave him behind and go off on your own. However, many puzzles require you to make use of both of them, so I didn't go solo that much outside of scripted sections. I struggled with the system at first, particularly during a puzzle where I couldn't figure out how to switch characters without failing it. After a while though, I got used to it and I honestly like it. Rebecca and Billy both have their own strengths and weaknesses, so choosing carefully who to take with me and how to distribute resources felt meaningful. There were times when I had to get an item where I knew I had to go through many zombies, and since Billy is faster and more resistant to attacks, I chose to only go with him. And since I knew that Rebecca could take less hits, I decided to give her the handgun upgrade instead of Billy. My experience was filled with decisions like these, and I loved that. However, and if you've heard anything about this game, you will know about this already. There are no item boxes in this game, and it makes it extremely painful to play. Item boxes were a staple of Resident Evil that allowed you to store any and all resources and pick them up later from any other box in the game. These were removed entirely from this game, and to make up for that, you can now drop items anywhere and pick them up again later. In theory, this is a neat idea as it maintains the immersion that you actually carry every item with you, nothing magically teleports. The downside is, of course, if you want to keep these items, you will have to make multiple runs back and forth to carry them over to the next area. Considering how long it takes, especially with those door animations, it is an absolute waste of your time. Now there are sections in the game where it makes sense not to have them, parts where Rebecca and Billy are separated and can only exchange single items with a small elevator. I understand how in these situations item boxes would defeat the point of the two being separated, but not having them in the game at all is such a mind-boggling design decision. The idea makes sense, but in practice it's utterly ridiculous and pointless too, since you likely end up creating makeshift item boxes out of each save room anyway by littering the flow of resources. Managing items between two characters is, in my view, enough additional friction. The levels and environments of Resident Evil 0 are another double-edged blade. Because it uses the same engine and techniques as the RE1 remake, it looks just as spectacular, if not more so in certain levels, and the game starts with incredibly strong design-wise with its section on the train as well. It's such a unique area, and even though it's short, it's designed as well as such a linear space in a Resident Evil game possibly could have been. Unfortunately, it starts to fall apart soon after. The train eventually crashes, almost foreshadowing that, and you find yourself in a training facility that is essentially a lesser version of the mansion from RE1 in all but name. The common theme for this and all subsequent areas is that they are aesthetically pleasing but incredibly uninspired. It's just another mansion and various kinds of labs and factories. Returning to some locations from the original RE2 and 3 in this engine is a nice touch, but the attempt to tie this into earlier games feels lazy for the most part. And while the levels are well designed for gameplay purposes with decent puzzles and mostly balanced enemy encounters, they still ended up being forgettable to me. I already felt signs in Code Veronica that the formula might be running stale, and 0 was the confirmation. This might admittedly also be down to the fact that I played way too much Resident Evil this year.
I'm in touch with humanity.
There is one last aspect regarding the gameplay of Resident Evil 0 that I want to talk about: the combat. It's almost the exact same as before, with the same selection of weapons and the same kind of boss design. Although for some reason the aiming system has been changed for the worse in this game. There is still auto aim, but I've had many moments when I should have hit an enemy and Rebecca or Billy missed them by half a meter. The lock on also likes to snap to a faraway enemy even when there is a zombie getting back up right in front of you. This might be down to the fact that I used modern control scheme. I don't know how it was with the original, but it's an issue I noticed. On top of that, this game also has some of the worst enemy types in the series. The Mimicry Marcus, who is extremely spongy if you don't happen to have Molotov cocktails, and the monkeys. The goddamn monkeys. Life could be a dream! The bosses here are okay. Just like in every RE game up to this point, they are essentially a test of how many grenade rounds you've been able to save up, a test of positioning and also of plain patience. In a game all about resource management, it totally fits, but these fights are my least favorite parts of the original games, and that hasn't changed here. And yes, the Nemesis still haunts me in my dreams, okay? Overall, despite some weird changes to the aiming system and annoying enemy types, I still had fun with the usual gameplay loop of using my ammo with intention and narrowly avoiding the grasp of enemies. As I said though, the formula in this state felt like it ran its course, and Zero's attempts to break it up are equal parts success and failure. The story of Resident Evil 0 is also a mixed bag. To talk about it in more detail, I must go into spoilers. If you haven't played this game yet and want to go in blind, skip ahead to the timestamp on screen. The game's story is, as always, utter nonsense, full of evil people doing evil things while laughing like the devil. Though I did find myself attached to Rebecca and Billy, even though the amount of actual narrative moments between them is extremely limited. As a standalone experience, it's enjoyable for sure, but as a prequel that sets up the events of RE1, 2 and 3, what a letdown. RE0 adds some pieces of lore about how the T-Virus even broke out in the first place, the part that William Birkin and Albert Wesker played, yet all of it feels so redundant because there are maybe 2 cutscenes with them that hardly add anything substantial to deepen the story. The game's main antagonist, James Marcus, is admittedly a fresh idea, one of Umbrella's co-founders and scientists behind the T-Virus. He was assassinated by Wesker and Birkin and returned to life after a mutated leech infected his body, which for some reason turned him into an opera singer able to summon leeches. It's insane, of course, but it gives the story some unique flair. However, he also appears in 2 to 3 scenes at most and does basically nothing apart from harassing Rebecca and Billy from time to time. And that is also the extent of these antagonists interacting or even having an impact on Rebecca and Billy. Their story is entirely disconnected from Wesker, Birkin and Marcus, apart from the fact that they happen to be in Marcus's mansion. Training facility. Even if you're a fan of the series thirsting for more lore, Zero doesn't give you anything meaningful and you could skip it entirely if I'm honest. It almost seems as if they couldn't decide whether to make this a spin-off that stands on its own or actually serves as a setup for the entire series. As I said, I like the dynamic between Billy and Rebecca and even the wild concept for the antagonists, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there's a massive gap in the story, missing strings to tie the threads together, and so the question loomed over my head. Could a remake change that for the better? The same rumors that are teasing a potential Code Veronica remake coming next have also alluded to the possibility of the Resident Evil Zero remake being in the works. Whether or not this is true is of course in doubt until it is officially revealed, but it allows us to speculate on whether or not it should be remade, and if it is, what it should change from the original. Unlike Code Veronica, which I wholeheartedly want a remake for, I am more torn when it comes to Zero. With the game's story, there are several changes I would like to see. For one, integrating Billy's and Rebecca's story more with James Marcus and the other Umbrella madmen by actually creating meaningful interactions. Secondly, fleshing out the progression of the friendship at the core of this game by creating more moments of conflict and reconciliation. More ups and downs, essentially. I really hope they double down on that. As for the concept behind James Marcus, truth be told, I don't know how that could be translated into the current style of Resident Evil stories. If they remake this game, they will surely tone down this absurd concept, but I struggle to think of ways to do it right. In any case, I expect massive changes, but if they come together in a more cohesive story, I'd consider that a win in the end. The main issues I see with remaking RE0 are related to its levels though, because as I said, even though the environments look stellar, the locations are so uninspired apart from the train. For a potential remake, I honestly hope that they completely scrap many of its levels in favor of entirely new ones. Visually speaking, there's hardly any potential for an upgrade anyway, so they might as well go in a different direction. They can go crazy with the tie-ins to the original games and the remakes, but it needs to be fresh. Big changes are needed. As for Zero's standout feature, controlling two characters at the same time, after getting to grips with this system, I appreciate it to the point where I believe a remake should absolutely keep it. Changes must be made, not least of which should be the addition of item boxes, but I hope that they keep the system because it allows for unique situations that are not possible otherwise. As much as I like the A and B scenarios of RE2 and the dual structure of RE9, it would be a shame if they went that exact same route here. Overall, there are some changes I would love to see, particularly in regards to the story, levels and item management, but I hope they leave the gameplay structure of the game intact. Unlike Code Veronica though, it's not a remake that I'm all that excited about, because I don't see as much potential as I do in that game. Regardless, if it's real, we have a while longer to speculate about it since it's rumored to come out in 2028 at the earliest. Those were some of my thoughts after finally playing Resident Evil Zero for the first time. As much as I appreciate certain parts of it, it was still incredibly painful to play through. The lack of item boxes, certain enemies such as the monkeys, and uninspired environments made for a rather miserable experience overall. Though I must say that it wasn't as bad of a game as I was led to believe. I still prefer it over games such as 6 and Revelations 2 thanks to how solid the level design still is and how much I liked Billy and Rebecca. Yet it's the RE game that I feel the most indifferent about. In any case, that's it from me. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of RE0 and whether or not you would like to see a remake of it. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.